I'm Alexis Moreno, 28, gripping Grandma's scarf as I sit through the funeral in Portland, Maine. My family's grief feels like a performance. Mom fakes tears, snapping photos for her followers. Bad angle, she hisses, adjusting her pose. Dad argues over costs, eyes glued to his stocks. Hours later, the attorney drops a bomb. I inherit $22.5 million. Mom's smile vanishes. Dad mutters, "No way." My brother glares, accusing me of scheming. A video plays Grandma and Grandpa, their voices firm. "Some of you only saw our money." My chest tightens, but I stay quiet. That night at family dinner, it all erupted. Mom demands I sign over control. I refuse. Her hand flies, slapping my cheek hard. "You don't deserve it." "You have no say here," she snapped. The table freezes. I don't flinch, just walk out, pull my phone. Fingers trembling, I type cancel everything. Immediately. A move they'd regret by morning. What I did next flipped their world upside down. They thought they could break me, but I was just getting started. Before I get to my story, I want to know what time and what city you're listening in. I'm glad to know how far my story has spread. The next morning, my phone buzzed with Dad's voicemail. His voice came through sharp and angry. "What the hell did you do, Alexis? Fix this, or you're done." I replayed it twice, my heart pounding. In the background, I heard Mom yelling about the power outage and Jacob complaining about no Wi-Fi. Their house must have gone dark from the services I canceled last night, the bills I'd been covering for months without them knowing. I couldn't stay. Grabbing my backpack, I stuffed in clothes, a laptop, and Grandma's scarf. The apartment keys dug into my palm as I locked up, aware Dad controlled the lease. One word from him and eviction papers would arrive. I slipped down the stairs, avoiding neighbors, and hit the road before traffic picked up. The drive to the harbor house felt endless, the bay's outline emerging as dawn broke. I parked by the old wooden steps, the place looking unchanged despite everything. Before I reached the door, it swung open. A middle-aged man with graying hair and a quiet demeanor stepped out. "Miss Alexis, welcome," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Luis Alvarez, the estate manager here for 15 years. He guided me inside the familiar creak of floors, easing my tension a bit. "Your grandparents trusted me with this." Luis pulled a small USB drive from his pocket. "They said you'd need it if family turned ugly." We moved to Grandpa's study, the desk cluttered with old ledgers from their seafood business. I inserted the drive files, popping up instantly. The first document was an email chain from 3 years back. Dad pleading for $100,000, promising quick returns on his latest scheme. Grandpa replied cautiously but attached transfer confirmation. Follow-ups showed no repayment, Dad dodging questions. Another folder held scanned journals. One entry detailed Mom arriving with real estate agents, measuring rooms and snapping photos. "Oh, she claims it's for redecorating ideas," Grandma wrote. But I overheard her discussing market value. My fingers scrolled faster, uncovering more. Thousands wired to Jacob's failed app ventures, each one defaulted. Property deeds, Mom tried pushing through last year, claiming updates for tax purposes. They'd been chipping away at the estate piece by piece while pretending to care. A soft tap at the door broke my focus. Denise Ellis, the housekeeper, entered, carrying tea, her eyes red from recent loss. "Reading Mrs. Crystal's records?" she asked, setting the tray down. It wasn't a question. I kept copies too, as she asked. She returned with a box of printouts, loan agreements, startup proposals, all unpaid. "Your mother even tried getting signatures during hospital visits." The evidence piled up like waves crashing. They'd exploited every visit, every favor. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me. Just then, my phone dinged, a text from Brandy Kim. "On my way, heard about the mess." As my colleague at the school, she knew my family's patterns. Minutes later, she arrived, hugging me without words. We sat together, sifting through files. "This is insane," Brandy said, pointing to a wire transfer. "They've been leeching for years." Her tech savvy helped organize the digital mess, flagging patterns I missed. As we worked, the weight shifted from panic to purpose. Grandpa's words echoed in my mind about standing firm. By afternoon, the house felt like a fortress. Luis checked in, offering to secure the gates. "Your grandparents prepared for this," he said. Brandy nodded. "We need a plan." I agreed, knowing the fight was just beginning. The next afternoon, I sat at Grandpa's desk, the USB drive still warm in my hand from yesterday's discoveries. The harbor house creaked softly, a familiar comfort, but my pulse raced. I needed help. I dialed Ryan Hayes, the family attorney who'd read the will. "Alexis, I'm on my way," he said, voice steady. Within hours, the dining room filled with faces I hadn't expected to lean on. Ryan arrived first, his leather briefcase stuffed with legal folders. "Your grandparents trusted me for 20 years, he said, setting up at the table. Victoria Grant, their financial advisor, followed, her tablet glowing with account details. "I've locked the estate funds tight," she assured me. Anna Reed, Grandpa's business partner at the seafood chain, strode in next, her expression grim. "Someone sniffing around our suppliers, asking about contracts." Denise Ellis, the housekeeper, slipped in quietly, clutching a folder of her own records. Brandy Kim, my colleague from school, sat beside me, scrolling her phone. "Check this," she said, tilting the screen. Mom had posted on Instagram a tearful selfie captioned, "Betrayed by family fighting for what's ours." The post already had hundreds of likes, comments piling up from strangers in Portland. "She's painting you as the villain," Brandy muttered, her fingers flying to screenshot it. I rubbed my temples, the sting of Mom's slap still fresh in my mind. "They're not stopping," I said. Ryan nodded, pulling out papers. "We can file for protective orders, but we need more evidence." Denise set her folder down. "I've got something." She opened it to reveal bank statements, each highlighting transfers to Dad's failing real estate deals. "Mrs. Crystal asked me to track every dollar." Anna spoke up. "Employees at the seafood stores reported odd calls, someone claiming to represent the family digging for financials." My stomach twisted. Jacob's tech startup had always burned through cash, and now it seemed he was targeting the business. Victoria tapped her tablet. "I found withdrawals attempted last week blocked because your grandparents changed the access codes." Luis Alvarez appeared at the doorway holding a small hard drive. "Miss Alexis, the security system recorded everything." We crowded around Grandpa's old computer as he plugged it in. Footage from the day of the funeral loaded, Mom wrapping silverware in her scarf, Dad pocketing a signed ledger, Jacob slipping a small painting under his jacket. They'd moved through the house like scavengers, their fake tears barely dry. "That's theft," Ryan said, his pen scratching notes. "This plus the financial records gives us grounds for legal action." Brandy zoomed in on a frame. "Look," Mom's checking prices on her phone while grabbing stuff. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected, their greed laid bare in grainy video. My phone buzzed again, another voicemail, this time from Jacob. "You're making a mistake, Alexis," he said, his voice low. "Hand it over or we'll make things public." I played it for the group, my hands shaking. Brandy frowned. "He's bluffing, but they're coordinated. That Instagram post wasn't random." Victoria leaned forward. "Your grandparents set up a trust structure to protect the estate from this kind of grab. I've got the portfolio details, 22.5 million, mostly in business assets and investments," Anna added. "The seafood chain's employees are loyal. They're ready to back you if this hits the community." Denise spoke softly. "Mrs. Crystal knew this would happen. She told me to watch your mother especially." Her folder included a letter from Mom to Grandma dated last year, pushing for a quick sale of the harbor house. "For your benefit," it claimed, but the attached appraisal showed millions in potential profit. I stood pacing the room. The weight of their lies pressed down, but the team around me felt like a lifeline. "What's our next step?" I asked. Ryan flipped open his laptop. "We compile this camera footage, financials, that letter, and file for emergency orders. Main courts move fast on clear evidence." Brandy's phone pinged. "Another post," she said, her voice tight. Mom had doubled down now, hinting at my unstable behavior to her followers. Comments from local business owners I recognized stung the most, questioning my character. "We need to counter this," Brandy urged, already drafting a response from my account. Luis checked his phone. "The gates are secure, but I'll monitor for visitors." Anna nodded. "I'll warn the store managers to report any more strange calls." The room hummed with purpose, each person a piece of the defense I hadn't known I'd need. As daylight faded, I looked at the team. Grandpa's words about standing firm rang in my ears. They thought they could bully me into submission, but every lie they told was building my case stronger. 3 days after the team meeting, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I sat in Grandpa's study, the harbor house quiet except for the faint hum of waves outside. Brandy Kim leaned over my shoulder, her laptop open. "Your mom's gone viral," she said, voice tight. I glanced at her screen. Mom's latest Instagram post, a video of her in a black dress dabbing tears. "My own daughter turned against us, stealing what belongs to the family," she said to thousands of followers. Comments flooded in, locals I knew calling me greedy, unstable. My throat tightened, but I pushed it down. Brandy scrolled further. "She's tagging businesses in Portland, stirring up trouble." I checked my email. My principal had forwarded a message from Dad. "We're concerned about Alexis's mental state," it read, claiming I wasn't fit to teach. The school hadn't bought it, but the accusation stung. "They're hitting you from every angle," Brandy said, her fingers tapping furiously. My phone pinged again, a direct message with a video link. I clicked and my stomach dropped. It was Grandma and Grandpa, or so it looked, speaking in stilted voices. "Alexis pressured us to change the will," the fake grandma said. "We were scared." The video was a deep fake, their faces oddly stiff. But it was convincing enough to fool most. "This is next level," Brandy muttered, pausing the clip. "Jacob's tech skills, I bet." I called Ryan Hayes immediately. "They're escalating," I said, forwarding the video. "This is slander, Alexis," he replied, his voice calm but firm. "We can use it against them." Brandy, already on her laptop, pulled up software to analyze the file. "Metadata shows it was made 2 days ago," she said, pointing to timestamps. "I can trace the upload to an IP linked to Jacob's startup server." Her tech know-how was a lifeline I hadn't expected. Ryan arrived within the hour, his briefcase heavier than before. The camera footage from the funeral, Denise's financial records, and now this deepfake. "It's enough for emergency protective orders," he said, spreading papers across the table. "Maine courts prioritize clear evidence of harassment." I nodded, my resolve hardening. "File them," I said. "All of them." Brandy kept digging, her screen glowing with code. "Got it," she said, pulling up a report. "The deepfake used a free AI tool, sloppy work. I've isolated artifacts, pixel distortions, audio glitches. We can prove it's fake." She emailed the analysis to Ryan, who added it to the legal packet. "This strengthens our case," he said, his pen moving fast. "They're trying to ruin your reputation, but they've overplayed their hand." By the next morning, Mom's Instagram had another post, a photo of me as a teenager, captioned, "She's always been troubled." Locals I'd grown up with were liking it, their comments sharp. I felt exposed, but Brandy squeezed my hand. "They're desperate," she said. "Let's stay focused." I took a breath, remembering Grandpa's advice to keep my head clear. Victoria Grant called with an update. "Your parents tried accessing the estate accounts again, denied thanks to the new codes." Anna Reed texted next. "Store managers got emails from an anonymous account questioning the seafood chain's stability." "It's your family, no doubt. Their moves were relentless, but each one gave us more to work with." Ryan filed the protective orders that afternoon, citing harassment, theft, and defamation. "Maine's Title 19A is strict on this," he explained. "With the deepfake and Instagram posts, we're looking at a quick approval." By the end of the week, the court responded, temporary orders granted, barring Mom, Dad, and Jacob from contacting me or the business directly. Violations could mean fines or jail time. Brandy showed me a draft post for my own account. A simple statement. "Lies spread fast, but truth lasts longer." We held off posting, waiting for Ryan's advice. "Let the orders hit first," he said. "They won't expect it." I looked out the window, the harbor's gray waves steady against the chaos. My family thought they could bury me with lies, but every step they took was digging their own hole deeper. A week after the protective orders were filed, I stood outside the Portland Chamber of Commerce, the harbor's salty breeze cutting through my jacket. The luncheon was set to honor Grandma and Grandpa's seafood business, a legacy spanning decades. My stomach churned knowing Mom, Dad, and Jacob would show up. Ryan Hayes adjusted his tie beside me. "Stay calm," he said. "The community's watching." Inside the banquet hall buzzed with local business owners, their chatter pausing as I entered. Anna Reed, already at our table, leaned in. "Employees are here to back you," she whispered, nodding toward a group in company polos. Brandy Kim, phone in hand, scanned the room. "No sign of them yet," she said, but her eyes stayed sharp. The chamber president, a gray-haired man named Tom Wheeler, took the podium. "We're here to celebrate the Moreno family's contribution to Portland." He began, holding up a plaque. "Their seafood chain built jobs and trust." Applause rippled, but I caught movement at the entrance. Mom swept in her black dress, camera ready, Dad and Jacob trailing. Their faces were all confidence, like they owned the place. Mom made a beeline for Tom, her voice loud enough to carry. "There's been a misunderstanding about the estate," she said, dabbing her eyes. "We're here to claim family heirlooms rightfully ours." Dad stepped forward, his tone smooth. "The business belongs to all of us, not just one person." Jacob hung back, his expression uneasy, avoiding my gaze. I stood, my legs steady despite the nerves. "Those heirlooms were left to me," I said, loud enough for the room to hear. "The will is clear." Gasps spread as Tom frowned, glancing between us. Mom's smile faltered, but she pressed on. "Alexis isn't equipped to manage this. She's confused, unstable." Before I could respond, a woman in the crowd stood, Mrs. Larson, a neighbor who'd known Grandma for years. "I saw you take silverware from their house the day of the funeral." She called out, her phone raised with a photo. "Posted it online too." Murmurs grew. A store manager in a polo stood next. "Anonymous emails tried to scare our suppliers, but we know the Morenos' real wishes." Brandy leaned over, whispering, "Check Twitter." I glanced at her phone. Local reporters were live tweeting, quoting Mrs. Larson. A news van idled outside, its logo visible through the window. "Who called the media?" Dad snapped, his face reddening. Another neighbor, Mr. Coleman, raised his hand. "I did. We protect our own in Portland." Mom clutched her purse, her composure cracking. "This is a family matter," she said, voice shrill. But the room wasn't hers. Anna stood, her voice cutting through. "The seafood chain thrives because of Eric and Crystal's integrity, not yours." Employees nodded, some clapping. A reporter approached, microphone ready, asking about the will. Ryan handed me a folder. "Show them," he said. I held up a copy of the will, my voice clear. "Grandma and Grandpa chose me to carry their legacy. Every move you've made proves why." The crowd's applause drowned out Mom's protest. Jacob shifted, his eyes meeting mine for a split second, guilt maybe, but he stayed silent. Dad grabbed Mom's arm, steering her toward the exit. "This isn't over," he muttered, but his steps were hurried. Jacob followed, head down, avoiding the staring crowd. The news van's camera tracked them as they left, their united front crumbling under the town's gaze. Tom returned to the podium, handing me the plaque. "To Alexis Moreno for upholding the Moreno legacy," he said. The room stood, clapping their support, a warmth I hadn't expected. Brandy grinned, snapping a photo. "This is going viral for the right reasons," she said. As we sat back down, Anna squeezed my shoulder. "Your grandparents would be proud." I held the plaque, its weight grounding me. They'd tried to tear me down in front of everyone, but Portland saw through their lies. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time I felt the town behind me. 3 months after the mediation, I sat at my desk in the Portland Elementary School, my nameplate, Alexis Moreno Teacher, still the title that grounded me. The Harbor House had become my home, its quiet floors a reminder of Grandma and Grandpa's trust. I'd spent weeks setting up the Moreno Foundation, a scholarship fund for kids training in the seafood trade. Today, the first recipients would visit. 5 teenagers filed into my classroom clutching acceptance letters. Their eyes widened as I explained the program: full tuition for vocational courses, stipends for living, and apprenticeships at the family seafood chain. My grandparents believed in building futures, I told them, handing out packets. One girl, nervous but bright, whispered, "This changes everything." I smiled, thinking of Grandpa's lessons about hard work. Outside school, I'd blocked Mom's number after her last text, a plea for family unity, with a link to her latest Instagram sob story. Dad's emails demanding a cut of the $22.5 million went unanswered. Jacob sent one message asking to meet just us. I deleted it. Their signatures on the mediation agreement bound them to return stolen items, silverware, ledgers, a painting, all back in the house now. Contact was over. Ryan Hayes called with updates. "Your parents violated the protective orders," he said. "They emailed a supplier claiming you're mismanaging the business." The court wasn't lenient. Fines hit Dad's already crumbling real estate ventures, pushing him toward Chapter 7 bankruptcy. His credit score, once his pride was wrecked, locking him out of new deals. Portland's business circle, tight-knit and loyal to Grandpa's legacy, cut ties with him. Brandy Kim stopped by the house that evening carrying takeout from a local seafood shack. "Your mom's influencer gigs are drying up," she said, scrolling through Twitter. Brianna's followers had dropped after a local news outlet ran a story on the mediation citing her theft and defamation. A civil lawsuit for slander filed by Ryan on my behalf loomed over her. Maine's courts didn't take kindly to her public lies, and her brand deals vanished as sponsors backed away. Jacob's startup was the next to fall. Investors, spooked by the family's actions, pulled funding from his app project. Ryan had warned that elder abuse charges were still on the table, and if pursued, Jacob could face probation under Maine law. His last email hinted at regret, but I didn't reply. Their choices had carved a line I wouldn't cross. The seafood chain thrived under Anna Reed's management, with employees now sharing profits through a new plan I'd pushed for. Victoria Grant sent financial reports showing the estate's investments stable and growing. "Your grandparents would be proud," she wrote. I walked through the harbor house, touching Grandma's knitting basket untouched since her passing. Their trust wasn't just the money, it was the values they'd instilled. One afternoon, Luis Alvarez brought a box from the attic labeled "For Alexis." Inside were Grandpa's old business journals detailing the seafood chain's start in the 1960s. A note from Grandma tucked between pages read, "Stand firm, Alexis. Family is who lifts you, not who takes." I held it, my eyes stinging, but kept moving forward. At school, a student sat in my office, her voice shaky. "My parents say I owe them for everything," she said, echoing my own past. I handed her a packet: resources for setting boundaries, something I'd learned the hard way. "You're worth more than their demands." I told her words I wished I'd heard sooner. 6 months after the mediation, the Portland Press-Herald ran a feature on the Moreno Foundation. "Local teacher honors family legacy," the headline read. The article detailed the scholarship's employee profit sharing and the seafood chain's community impact. Not a word about my family's drama. Ryan had kept it out of the press, per my request. I walked the harbor house grounds, stopping at a new bench by the water, a plaque engraved "Crystal and Eric Moreno Legacy Through Love." The team, Ryan, Brandy, Anna, Victoria, Luis, Denise, gathered for a quiet dinner that night. The dining table, once a battleground, now filled with laughter. They were my family now, bound by actions, not blood. Mom, Dad, and Jacob kept trying: texts, emails, even a letter from Mom's lawyer. I ignored them all, my phone's block list growing. Their world had collapsed under the weight of their greed, and I'd built something lasting in its place. The lesson was clear: family isn't owed loyalty if they betray you. Setting boundaries, hard as it was, protected what mattered most. 7 students arrived that morning, nervous but eager, holding scholarship acceptance letters. I handed out packets detailing full tuition, monthly stipends, and guaranteed jobs at the family's seafood chain. "Grandma and Grandpa built this business on hard work," I said, watching their faces light up. One boy, barely 16, grinned. This means I can stay here, not leave town. Their hope mirrored what I'd felt learning from Grandpa years ago. I'd stopped checking Mom's Instagram after blocking her number. Her last post, a tearful rant about family betrayal, got no reply from me. Dad's voicemails demanding a share of the $22.5 million went straight to spam. Jacob sent a text asking for a coffee meetup to clear things up. I swiped it away, their signed mediation agreement enough to keep them at bay. The returned silverware and ledgers sat untouched in the study, a reminder of their greed. Ryan Hayes called with news. "Your parents breached the protective orders again," he said. His voice clipped. "They contacted a store manager pushing for control." Maine's courts slapped them with heavier fines, crushing Dad's real estate deals. His latest venture collapsed under Chapter 7 bankruptcy, his credit score tanking so hard no bank would touch him. Portland's tight business community, loyal to the Moreno name, blacklisted him from new contracts. Brandy Kim dropped by after school, her phone buzzing with notifications. "Brianna's done," she said, showing a local news article. The Portland Press-Herald exposed her theft at the funeral backed by mediation leaks. Her influencer status crumbled, sponsors dropped her, and a slander lawsuit I'd filed through Ryan gained traction. Maine's laws hit hard on defamation, and her lost brand deals left her scrambling. Jacob's startup imploded next, his investors wary after the public fallout yanked their funding. Ryan had flagged potential elder abuse charges still looming if we pushed forward. Under Maine law, Jacob could face probation or worse for his role in the financial schemes. His last email hinting at an apology sat unread. I wasn't open to second chances. The seafood chain grew stronger, with Anna Reed rolling out an employee ownership plan I'd proposed. Workers, many who'd known Grandpa, now had a stake in the profits. Victoria Grant emailed updated financials. The estate's investments were secure, even expanding. "You're honoring their vision," she wrote. I walked the house, pausing at Grandpa's old desk, where a faded photo of us fixing a delivery van hung on the wall. One evening, Luis Alvarez handed me a sealed envelope from the attic. "Your grandparents left this for you," he said. Inside was a letter from Grandma Alexis. "Choose who you call family by their heart, not their name." Her words steadied me, a guide through the chaos. At school, a shy student lingered after class. "My family expects me to pay them back for everything," she said, her voice small. I gave her a folder, legal resources, boundary tips, lessons I'd learned the hard way. "You don't owe them your worth," I told her, echoing what I needed at her age. 6 months after the mediation, a local paper ran a story: Moreno Foundation lifts Portland youth. It praised the scholarships and the seafood chain's new profit sharing, no mention of my family's mess. I'd asked Ryan to keep it quiet. The community's support felt enough. I stood by the harbor, a new garden planted where Grandma once grew herbs, a small sign reading "Crystal and Eric Moreno, built on trust." That night, Ryan, Brandy, Anna, Victoria, Luis, and Denise gathered for dinner at the house. The table, once a place of betrayal, now held warmth and laughter. They were my family, earned through loyalty. Mom's lawyer sent one last letter, a weak plea for settlement. I shredded it. Dad's call stopped his business, ruined. Jacob's startup folded, his silence final. Their greed had burned their bridges, and I'd built new ones with those who stood by me. The truth was simple: family isn't blood if it's built on lies. Protecting what matters means walking away from those who don't.
"How much do you want?" "We're prepared to pay, so let's get this settled." I was taken aback by those unexpected words. I had just entered the hospital room when my sister-in-law, Hadley, of all people, made that shocking proposal. Before I could fully process what she was suggesting, she repeated herself, clearly indicating she wanted to fix everything with money. "Wait, what?" I exclaimed, stunned. "Hadley, are you really saying that?" "Yes, I am," she answered flatly, showing no sign of hesitation. "Explain yourself," I demanded, struggling to mask my shock. Hadley and her husband, Mark, my husband Brian's older brother, had come dangerously close to causing a disaster. Their open disregard for us was apparent. Yet they seem to think everything could be brushed aside if they just threw enough money at it. I won't accept any settlement, I said, my voice shaking with barely restrained fury. Hadley, you need to take responsibility. That's just unbelievable, Hadley shot back, rolling her eyes. You've always been so stubborn, Laura. You don't know what could happen if you push us too far. Don't test us. Fury bubbling inside, I struggled to maintain my composure and continued to argue with the shameless couple. The air was thick with tension until my husband, Brian, finally stepped in. I've had enough, he said in a cold, controlled tone. I glanced at him and saw a look on his face I had never seen before, something far more frightening than I had ever expected. Hadley sneered, Brian, you've always believed that money can't solve everything, but don't we all want it? I'm right, aren't I? Mark nodded in agreement. As long as there's enough money, any problem can be solved. Even Laura will stay quiet once she's compensated. Facing their smug expressions, Brian took a step forward and said, if money can solve everything, let's see if it can fix something like this. Their expressions faltered, and they eventually stormed out of the room, throwing a few insults over their shoulders as they left. As Hadley boldly claimed, perhaps everyone desires money to some degree. It certainly has the power to bring comfort and ease, almost like magic, but as Brian pointed out, there are things money can never buy, nor resolve. The near loss of me and our baby proved that without a doubt. I am Laura Bennett, 32 years old and 9 months pregnant. My husband, Brian, also 32, eagerly awaited the birth of our child. We had hoped for a peaceful and quiet celebration of this special time, but it wasn't meant to be, because someone couldn't stand the thought of us having a child. That someone was my sister-in-law, Hadley, who was married to Brian's older brother, Mark. She was a mother herself, yet she always seemed to involve herself in our business. From the moment I joined the Bennett family, I could tell she wasn't thrilled about me. At first, I thought it was just her distant nature, but over time it became clear she harbored resentment, and she'd do anything to assert her superiority. When I first met Hadley at family gatherings after marrying Brian, I realized she came from an incredibly wealthy background. Her parents owned a large company, and she was strikingly beautiful, carrying herself like someone who had excelled at everything she tried. People were drawn to her charm and grace. Unfortunately, her spoiled upbringing turned her into a selfish person who believed money could buy her anything she wanted. She made snide remarks about my modest upbringing and even suggested that Brian, despite being her younger brother-in-law, should respect her above all else. Please stop, Hadley, I pleaded during one of our heated arguments. Don't say things like that. We've done nothing to upset you. But her response was always the same, mocking indifference. Brian tried to smooth things over to keep the peace, and I did my best to avoid conflict. Eventually, Mark's job moved them out of state, so for a time, we had less contact. We hoped the distance would calm Hadley's hostility, but deep down, I feared it would flare up again once they returned. Years later, Hadley and Mark unexpectedly reappeared, flaunting their lavish lifestyle. Laura and Bree, she greeted us at a family event. Still struggling, I see, but I suppose you've managed to put together something resembling a normal life by now. Hadley and Mark lived in complete luxury, designer clothes, high-end cars, and an overwhelming sense of entitlement. She bragged about bossing around her friends, leveraging her money to make them run errands for her. Those who initially resisted eventually caved when she waved large sums of cash in front of them. She quickly built her own clique of mothers who then came to harass Brian and me with constant jeers and insults. It was clear she relished humiliating us. Then, one day, I discovered I was pregnant. Overjoyed, I shared the news with Brian, who promised to be a dedicated and loving father. Inspired by his resolve, I too found the strength to stand firm for the sake of our child and my own well-being. I hoped we could enjoy this special time free from Hadley's interference, but that hope didn't last. About 9 months into my pregnancy, I bumped into Hadley on my way home from shopping. My baby bump was now unmistakable. Wow, Laura, she sneered, eyeing my belly, you've really let yourself go. What on earth have you been eating to make yourself look like that? It's not what you think, Hadley. I've just gained weight because I'm pregnant. It's completely natural. If you don't have anything nice to say, please leave me alone. Apparently offended by my lack of deference, Hadley stepped in front of me, blocking my way. Oh, so your belly's bigger, and your attitude is too, huh? How dare someone so ordinary get pregnant? You're really pushing my limits. I tried to stay calm. I don't care what you think, Hadley. I just want a peaceful life for me and my baby. My words seemed to enrage her further. Excuse me, Laura, But how dare you talk to me like that? She snapped, grabbing at me as I tried to walk past. Her hand swung out, striking my stomach. The impact sent me tumbling to the ground, pain coursing through my abdomen. Gasping for air, I managed to call Brian. My last words, the baby. What should I do? Barely left my mouth before everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, warm blankets covering me, and 4 drip attached to my arm. 2 of my closest friends, Amelia and Clara, were by my side. Why are you here? I asked, groggy. Is the baby okay? They urged me to stay still. Laura, don't try to move yet. You need to rest. I attempted to sit up, but the pain was overwhelming. That's when I noticed that my belly had shrunk. A nurse explained that I had gone into premature labor after losing consciousness and had to undergo an emergency C-section. My baby was in an incubator but otherwise fine. Thankfully, Brian had arrived soon after my call, learning the details from Amelia, Clara, and the doctor. Following the doctor's advice to rest, I focused on my recovery, eagerly anticipating the moment I could finally meet my baby. However, the next day, an uninvited pair entered my hospital room, Hadley and Mark. Without delay, they made their outrageous demand. Let's get straight to the point, Mark said. How much do you want? Excuse me? I stood there, stunned by the audacity of his words. How much do you need to be satisfied? We're offering to pay, so let's just settle this now, Hadley said coldly. My mind went numb with disbelief. Wait, did I just hear you correctly? Hadley, are you actually serious? Of course, I am, she replied, as though her proposal was the most reasonable thing in the world. It took everything in me not to let the sheer outrage show. The nerve of them, their disregard for what they had put us through, and the near disaster they had caused, was incomprehensible. I can't accept a bribe like that, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and fear. You almost killed me and my baby. You owe us more than money. You owe us responsibility. Hadley exchanged a look with Mark, her eyes filled with frustration. You're as stubborn as ever, Laura, she scoffed. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Are you really trying to make us angry? It's not about stubbornness, I snapped back. Stop treating us like we're beneath you. Hadley. Clara, who had been quietly observing, spoke up, her tone firm. How could you be so callous, Hadley? Laura's baby was in real danger. A single mistake could have cost them both their lives. Exactly, Amelia chimed in. And now you think throwing money at it makes everything okay? Shouldn't you be ashamed, not smug? Hadley scoffed, her nostrils flaring. You should be thanking us for even offering. Just take the settlement and be quiet before this gets worse for you. Know your place. It's obvious your parents never taught you any better. The tension in the room erupted, and soon we were all shouting at each other. We barely noticed when the door opened. Brian entered, his voice even and cold. I've heard enough, he said, his tone sharp. And there's no way we're solving this with money. The strength in his voice silenced everyone in the room. None of us had ever seen him this furious before, and it was terrifying. He turned his gaze toward Hadley, then Mark. Hadley, you've always thought money could fix anything. Seems like you haven't changed. Hadley laughed bitterly. Everyone wants money, Brian. It's just reality, am I wrong? Brian stood his ground, unwavering. Wanting money is one thing, but you've crossed a line. Some things can't be fixed with money. What you've done is proof of that. It was true. My baby and I were lucky to be alive. And Hadley showed no sign of remorse for what she'd caused. Mark stood by her, equally indifferent. I echoed Brian's words. Money can't fix everything. If it could, we wouldn't need police or lawyers. You both need to take responsibility. Hadley shot me a venomous look. You're more stubborn than usual. Laura, aren't you supposed to be grateful? Take the money and stop complaining. Know your place. Mark added with a sneer. Weren't you taught any better? Exhausted, I didn't have the energy to keep fighting, but Brian refused to back down. He stared them both down. If you really believe money can solve everything, he said, let's put that to the test. The two of them were taken aback by his response. What are you talking about? Hadley hissed. What could a couple of nobodies like you and Laura do? And with that, they stormed out of the room, hurling insults as they left. Brian, what did you mean by that? I asked, confused but grateful for his support. He placed a hand on my shoulder, his voice calm but determined. Don't worry, Laura, I've got it covered. He exchanged a meaningful glance with Amelia and Clara, who both nodded. Clara gave my arm a comforting pat. I didn't fully understand what was happening, but I could tell that stress wasn't good for my recovery. So, I chose to trust Brian and rest. The next evening, though, Hadley came back. Her voice could be heard before she even entered the room, shouting with rage. "I know you're in there. Laura, come out and face me, coward. You set me up, didn't you? I can see through your pathetic act." Her yelling was so loud that hospital staff had to intervene. When Brian walked in, he saw her and asked, his voice even but filled with authority, "What do you think you're doing, barging in here and yelling like that?" Hadley exploded, her face red with fury. "I know everything, Brian. Laura involved the police and lawyers in something so small. She planned all of this, didn't she?" "That's ridiculous," Brian shot back. "For someone with delusions like yours, that's exactly the response I'd expect. You're disturbing the patients here. Leave now, or take your excuses to the police station." Security guards arrived and escorted Hadley out. I could hear her shouts grow fainter as she was taken away, and soon sirens wailed in the distance, signaling that Brian had called the police. Later that night, Mark called me. "Please, don't make this worse," he begged, his voice desperate. "I'm divorcing her. Just leave me out of this, okay? Please." His words meant nothing to me. "If you're anything like her, that's on you," I said coldly, before hanging up and blocking his number. In the days that followed, I learned just what Brian had done. Our close friends, Amelia and Clara, had powerful connections. Amelia's husband was a police officer, and Clara's husband was a lawyer. They immediately stepped up to help, and without hesitation, Brian filed an assault and battery report against Hadley. Thanks to Amelia's husband, who had connections in the department, Hadley was swiftly arrested. Clara and her husband helped gather crucial evidence, including a recording of the conversation in the hospital that Amelia had captured. Their testimonies, along with mine, ensured a guilty verdict, and Hadley was ordered to pay a substantial compensation. To make matters worse for Hadley, Clara's husband was connected to the local press, and the story broke wide open. It turned out that her parents had been involved in embezzling company funds in the past to protect Hadley's reputation. The scandal caused the collapse of their family business. Mark's own reputation crumbled as well. He'd been riding on Hadley's wealth and status, and people quickly saw him for what he truly was. Gossip spread, and he was shunned by his colleagues. Eventually, he was sent far away to a different branch, and his marriage fell apart. Hadley was disowned by her family, and her children were taken from her. She was left with nothing, reportedly living in a park, relying on soup kitchens. Mark disappeared, some saying he fled by train, but no one knew where he went. Months later, I was discharged from the hospital, and both my baby and I were healthy and thriving. We received a large compensation from Hadley's side, and I couldn't help but be thankful that my daughter was growing stronger every day. This whole experience had brought Brian and me closer, and it had deepened my friendships with Amelia, Clara, and the others who truly cared for us. Our lives had returned to normal, and we cherished every moment of peace. One thing we all learned is that while money can offer temporary relief, it cannot solve every problem. Love, responsibility, and compassion are irreplaceable, no matter how much money someone offers. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Stay stunned. "Please, have mercy on this poor, fragile woman," my husband implored, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I glanced at Eric, torn between laughing and yelling. Fragile? His mother, who always managed to get her way, was far from helpless. Still, I relented. At the time, I had no idea that this choice would eventually tear my marriage apart. My name is Amanda, and my husband, Eric, is 2 years younger than me. His reckless nature often causes me stress. We first met when I was 27 at a matchmaking event, both searching for a lifelong partner. Before Eric, I had dated men who either weren't serious about marriage or were financially unstable, but Eric was different. While we were dating, he was always considerate, carrying my bags, treating me to meals, and going out of his way to be thoughtful. Later, I realized this wasn't special treatment just for me. He acted the same way toward his younger sister, Diana. I assumed it was simply his nature, but after we married, his priorities shifted, and it became evident that his kindness wasn't exclusive to me. Eric's family consisted of his mother, his father, who was divorced from her, and Diana. After a heated argument a few years ago, his parents separated, leaving his mother to live alone. Since then, she often visited our apartment, constantly seeking Eric's help. One day, she arrived, looking distressed. "I'm struggling to get by. Your father abandoned me, and I have no idea how to manage on my own. Please, Eric, come home. How can I survive like this?" she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Moved by her sorrow, Eric repeatedly asked me, what if we moved into my mother's house? His mother had no stable income and, despite receiving some divorce compensation, found it difficult to manage expenses and maintain the house. Back when Eric lived with her, things were fine, but after he moved in with me, she was left completely alone. Day after day, my husband begged. There's so much space in my mom's house, and I won't expect you to do all the housework. Wouldn't you consider moving in? His pleas became even more dramatic. Amanda, think of this poor, frail woman, please, let's help her. Hearing him describe her as frail caught me off guard, but I couldn't ignore her struggles. Guilt weighed on me, and eventually, I agreed. When I gave in, Eric and his mother rejoiced, though I tried to convince myself that things would be fine. I had secretly hoped to spend our early married days alone with my husband. Instead, we ended up under his mother's roof. Eric and I both worked, but truthfully, he wasn't particularly great at his job. His real passion lay in crafting the perfect burger. His dream was to open a burger shop one day. To gain experience, he worked as an apprentice at a restaurant, which consumed most of his time. Though I respected his dedication, it meant he was rarely home. He promised this was only temporary and even wrote a promissory note, vowing to repay me once his business took off. During the first month of living with his mother, she seemed grateful for our presence, but once our work schedules became demanding, she began treating the house as if it were solely hers and started speaking to me harshly. Amanda, don't throw plastic bottles in that bin. Have you been living under a rock? It's shocking that you can't even separate trash properly. What did your parents teach you? She scolded. I could only respond with a quiet, I'm sorry. But the truth was, I wasn't clueless about sorting garbage. I just wasn't familiar with her system. When we first moved in, I had asked about waste disposal, and she had reassured me, don't worry, I'll handle the sorting later. Yet every time I mistakenly placed a bottle in the wrong bin, she berated me, while completely ignoring when Eric did the same. Despite following her rules on trash collection days, the criticism never stopped. It felt less like guidance and more like intentional nitpicking. She also started expecting me to do all the housework, including cooking lunch, even though I had a full-time job. When I told her, that's just not possible, she snapped, don't say impossible. A daughter-in-law must do whatever she's asked. I was stunned. Hadn't she begged us to move in? It dawned on me, maybe she had never wanted me there. She likely only wanted Eric's financial support, and I was nothing more than an inconvenient addition. While I struggled with her hostility, my company introduced a remote work option. Hoping to ease tensions, I chose to work from home, thinking I could help with chores and prepare the lunches she wanted. But no matter how much I did, her attitude never changed. If anything, it got worse. If only my daughter-in-law weren't here, the house would feel so much more peaceful, she muttered one day. Her words cut deep. Running the household in that environment became unbearable. Eric, for one, was incredibly messy. He never sorted his laundry or picked up after himself. Every day, I had to gather his clothes from his room, and yet, he had the audacity to complain. Where are my favorite socks? He asked one morning. They're still drying, I replied. But I wanted to wear them today. You're too slow with the laundry, you need to do better. I was speechless. He refused to do his own laundry but still blamed me. Before I could respond, his mother chimed in. That's right, Amanda is home all day. Why can't she handle all the housework properly? Their words stung. No matter how much I did, they belittled my efforts. But the final blow came when my mother-in-law and Eric made an offhand comment. Now that Diana is coming home, it'll be embarrassing to have such a useless daughter-in-law around. What will she think? His mother muttered. Eric chuckled. Diana has probably matured a lot. When she sees how clumsy my wife is, she'll definitely laugh at me. That was the first time I had even heard that Diana was moving back in. Nobody had bothered to tell me. Diana, Eric's younger sister, had been married for 2 years and lived with her husband, though we had barely interacted. From their remarks, I gathered she didn't think much of me either. The day she arrived, my mother-in-law was ecstatic. Diana strolled in, dropped her bags, and collapsed onto the living room couch with a sigh. Ah, there's nothing like being home, she declared. I offered her a drink, trying to be polite. She glanced at me with confusion. Who is this person? She acted like she had no idea who I was, even though she had attended my wedding. Before I could respond, my mother-in-law jumped in. Diana, this is Eric's wife, she said with a sneer. She's terrible at housework, always tense, and completely useless. She used to work, but now she just lazes around all day. I was stunned. I hadn't quit my job, I had simply switched to remote work to accommodate the household's needs. Despite explaining this multiple times, both Eric and his mother seemed to act as if they had never heard it. Diana, taking her mother's words at face value, scoffed. "Oh, so you're housing an unemployed freeloader? Why even keep her around?" Then, laughing cruelly, she added, "Maybe she'll understand real hardship when she experiences it firsthand." My mother-in-law chuckled in agreement. "Exactly." Then, she turned to me with an announcement that left me speechless. "Amanda, listen carefully. Diana is pregnant and will be staying here to have her baby." I was blindsided. No one had mentioned Diana's pregnancy, let alone the fact that she planned to move in. This meant more financial strain, yet I had been left completely out of the loop. And then came the final blow. "Since Diana is moving back, we have no need for an unemployed daughter-in-law," my mother-in-law declared. "Pack your things and leave before she settles in, and if you don't, I'll throw your stuff out myself." I stared at her in disbelief. "Are you serious?" A part of me actually felt relieved. Anything was better than enduring daily humiliation in this house. I figured that without me, they would struggle financially, but my mother-in-law was too self-absorbed to realize that. "We'll be just fine without you," she said smugly. "Fine," I replied. "I'm leaving." Eric, the man who had once seemed so kind and attentive when we were dating, stood by silently. The moment we moved in with his mother, all his affection had disappeared. Now, it was clear, his real priority had always been his mother and sister. I had only ever been a financial safety net, supporting his dreams while he let me be treated like a servant. Without wasting any time, I made an important phone call. "I'm divorcing Eric," I said. "From now on, please collect rent from him or his mother." When the person on the other end asked what happened, I explained how I had been kicked out to make space for Diana. They apologized and assured me they would handle it. After that, I booked a hotel and started searching for my own place. Then, the panicked phone calls began. "What do you mean you want a divorce?" Eric demanded. "And what's this about repaying money? I thought we were fine." "Fine?" I repeated incredulously. "You threw me out for your sister's comfort, and you don't see the problem?" "Kicked you out? That's not true. You left so Diana wouldn't be stressed." Clearly, his mother and sister had twisted the story in his head. In reality, they had threatened to throw my belongings onto the street if I didn't leave immediately. Then, I asked, "By the way, did your father stop by?" Eric hesitated. "Yeah, he showed up talking about rent, but we own the house, right? There's no rent to pay." I nearly screamed. "Are you serious? When your parents divorced, your dad kept the house, but your mother refused to move out. The agreement was that she'd pay $2,000 a month in rent. That's how it's always been." He was stunned. "But I never paid rent." "Because you were busy with your burger apprenticeship and barely earning anything," I shot back. "I was the one paying $2,000 every month. I sent the money to your mother, and she paid from her account. I explained all of this to you when we moved in." His mother had conveniently forgotten that little detail. Now that I had cut them off, his father had come to collect what was owed. "You and your mother have to pay now," I said. Eric was shaken, but I felt nothing. He had spent so much time taking me for granted that I no longer cared about his struggles. "Also," I added, "your father has the divorce papers. And don't forget, there's still the money you owe me." His voice tightened. "Wait, what promissory note?" I sighed. How could he be so oblivious? "The one you signed," I reminded him. "You told me, I'm going to focus on becoming a burger shop owner, so you handle the finances for now. I promise to pay you back later." "Those were your words." There was a long silence. "Oh, did I really say that?" he murmured. "Yes," I said coldly, "and now, I'm done. I can't wait around forever for your dream to magically happen. I've been covering $2,000 in rent and living expenses for 3 people, and I'm finished." Desperate, he pleaded, "Please don't leave me, you're the only one I have." I shook my head. "I don't need a husband who won't pay bills, won't share housework, and lets his family treat me like garbage. If you won't sign the papers, I'll let the lawyers handle it." And with that, I hung up. From what I heard later, Eric finally snapped at his mother and Diana for the first time in his life. "Why would you do this?" he raged. "Amanda was the only reason we could afford to live here. Now I'm drowning in debt, and my dream is over." His mother and sister, who had never been held accountable before, were completely shocked. Diana burst into tears, and their mother stood there speechless. Meanwhile, Eric's father gave them an ultimatum. "If you can't pay, Get out by the end of the month, he declared. If you're still here after that, I'm calling the police. Panic set in. Diana's husband came to pick her up, but after hearing the full story, he scolded her for how shamefully she had behaved. Eric and his mother, now left with nothing, were forced to move into a tiny, run-down apartment. To make ends meet, Eric abandoned his burger apprenticeship and took on 2 part-time jobs to pay off his debt to me. His mother had no choice but to start working multiple jobs as well. As for me, I felt nothing but relief. They had used me for so long without an ounce of gratitude. Now, they were finally facing the consequences of their actions. With that toxic household behind me, I knew one thing for sure: my future had never looked brighter. And that, my friends, is the end of this story. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Stay tuned. Come on, just grab us some drinks, my sister-in-law Hannah said, dismissing me with a wave as if I were there to serve her. I gave a strained smile. We have a dinner reservation in 10 minutes. Lucy rolled her eyes. You're good at this stuff, just hurry up, she said. I should have walked away then, but instead, I let them chip away at me with their constant digs. Soon, they'd do something so cruel, so outrageous, that I'd finally reach my breaking point. When that happened, I'd make sure they remembered it forever. I'm Gianna, 35, and I'm in the middle of divorcing my not-so-great husband, Micah. I've made up my mind to distance myself from him and his toxic family. From the moment Micah and I got married, everything changed. He started treating me terribly, and his family didn't waste a second showing their true feelings. His parents and his 2 sisters, Hannah and Lucy, were always openly hostile toward me. Their husbands, Tom and Dominic, never took my side and fueled the toxic atmosphere. Over the years, it only got worse, and what should have been family gatherings turned into miserable affairs. The tipping point came during a recent vacation, meant to be a chance to relax. The plan was simple: unpack, settle into the hotel, then head to Passion for dinner. But after the meal, some members of the family decided they wanted to party until they couldn't stand up, despite having early plans the next day. Tom and Dominic, always stirring the pot, pointed out that the younger group could have their fun, but the older generation, Micah's parents, just wanted to relax. Everyone had hoped for a calm break, a chance to enjoy some peace, but Micah's family had other plans. Things seemed okay at first, until we reached the hotel. Micah's sisters, Hannah and Lucy, immediately began fighting over trivial things, while their husbands, Tom and Dominic, acted like children. Micah was too busy yelling at me over a packing mistake, one that was actually his fault due to his disorganization. Gianna, where are my socks? Micah snapped, clearly irritated. I laid them out for you, Micah. I'm not your mother, I replied, my patience wearing thin. The tension grew when the rest of the family arrived. Hannah, always the more dominant sister, shot me a dismissive look. Can you go get us drinks? She asked, her tone dripping with superiority. I glanced at the clock, reminding her, we're running out of time. We have dinner soon. Lucy rolled her eyes. You're good at this stuff, just do it quickly. I clenched my jaw. How many times do I have to remind you? I'm a chef, not a waitress. Gianna, relax, Micah interjected, sounding exasperated. Lucy shrugged. You do work in a restaurant, don't you? You serve food and drinks all day, she said, as if it was no big deal. I'm not just a waitress, I said firmly. And this isn't up for debate. Let's not blow this out of proportion. Micah waved it off. Okay. Let's just get ready for dinner. I'm starving. I tried to brush it off, chalking it up to the exhaustion from the long flight. I thought once we settled in, things would calm down. But I was wrong. Our dinner at Passion turned into a complete disaster because of my in-laws. They nitpicked every detail, and because I'm a professional chef, I became the scapegoat for anything that didn't meet their high, often ridiculous standards. Gianna, honey, something's off with this sushi, don't you think? Hannah asked, her tone condescending. I haven't tried it, I replied, trying to stay calm. Dominic, her husband, added, the ambience isn't great either. Don't you have connections in the restaurant business? Maybe you could get them to fix it. I don't work at Passion, Dominic, I said, gritting my teeth. Tom, trying to defend his wife and brother-in-law, said, "No need to be rude. Dominic was just asking a question. I mean, you're a chef, you should know what makes a dining experience good." By now, everyone in the restaurant was aware of the drama. I felt completely humiliated. Instead of enjoying a vacation, I had become a punching bag, expected to cater to the whims of my husband's family. It was clear they didn't see me as part of the family. I was just there to serve them. The moment I fully realized this was when I found out they had planned activities for the next 3 days, without me. I'd wake up to an empty suite, wait around all day, only for them to return late in the afternoon, drunk and laughing about all the fun they had without me. "Did you see Dad fall off the boat while we were tubing?" Tom laughed, barely able to catch his breath. "It wasn't that funny," Dominic grinned, as Hannah playfully elbowed him. "I thought it was hysterical," Hannah said, reliving the moment I had missed. I had had enough. I walked up to them, my voice rising. "Hey, guys." Hannah feigned surprise. "Oh, hey, Gianna. Didn't see you there. How are you doing? What's going on? I thought we were all going tubing together?" I asked, my hurt clearly showing. They exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, Micah spoke up. "You were sleeping. We didn't want to wake you. You couldn't knock on my door?" "I thought this was a family trip," I said, my frustration boiling over. From that moment on, it was clear they saw me as an afterthought. I was nothing to them. The last straw came a few days later, when our vacation was almost over. After dinner one night, I went to bed thinking we'd all leave together in the morning. Our flight wasn't until the afternoon, so sleeping in made sense. But when I woke up at 10 a.m., the entire suite was empty. Micah, his sisters, and their husbands were all gone. Their luggage was gone. Everything. I called Micah, but he didn't answer. None of them did. Desperate, I contacted the hotel front desk, and they told me they'd checked out just after 9 a.m. They were as confused as I was. In that moment, I realized just how little they cared about me. At first, I was heartbroken. Then, rage took over. It was obvious that Micah's family, his parents, his sisters, and their husbands, despised me. They had always excluded me in subtle ways, but this time, they had crossed the line. Instead of drowning in sorrow, I decided it was time to take control of my own fate and exact a little revenge. I extended my stay at the resort, upgraded to a smaller but cozy room just for myself, and made sure to fully embrace the stunning sunshine and beauty of the island, without anyone else. No longer burdened by the need to please anyone, I booked all kinds of activities, casino nights, boat cruises, tubing, hiking, shopping, and even a glamping adventure. Along the way, I bonded with a lively group of single women my age, sharing drinks and laughter as I unloaded about my miserable marriage and the cruelty of my in-laws. Their immediate support and willingness to stand by me reminded me of what real friendship felt like. For the first time in ages, I experienced true freedom, free from the toxicity of Micah and his family. I decided to stay for 2 more weeks in the Dominican Republic, savoring every new day. The painful memories of Micah's family, the yelling, the belittling, started to feel like a distant, unwanted chapter of my past. Of course, Micah called me the same day his family abandoned me. The conversation would change everything, or at least what was left of it. "Hey," Micah said, strangely casual. "Hi," I replied coldly, determined not to let him hear the turmoil in my voice. "You sound so calm." "Good, I was hoping you were safe," he said, his tone somehow fake and friendly. "I'm perfectly fine," I answered, keeping my composure. "Actually, I've got plans tonight, but I'm sure that's none of your business," he huffed, clearly annoyed. "Excuse me, I'm still your husband, and I'm part of this family." "Yes, it's my business," I let out a short, bitter laugh. "That's rich. Since when does family mean leaving someone behind on a trip you insisted they join? You all abandoned me, and that says everything about how little you care. And don't try the protective husband routine. It's as convincing as fish-flavored ice cream." There was a pause. "What are you implying?" I spoke slowly, firmly, every word drenched in bitterness. "Your mistake was thinking you could treat me like garbage and that I'd just take it. Leaving me behind backfired. I'm divorcing you. And by the way, I'm going out tonight with a great guy named David. Bet you didn't see that coming, did you? All your manipulation only made me stronger." "I'm doing great, Micah," I hope you get what you deserve. I hung up before he could reply. True to form, Micah and his family, his parents, sisters Hannah and Lucy, and their husbands Tom and Dominic, bombarded me with calls and texts afterward. I ignored every single one of them, choosing instead to keep enjoying my time. My vacation was blissful, and as I continued posting pictures and updates from my adventures, my supportive followers, who knew me as a well-respected chef with a strong online presence, quickly rallied behind me, pushing back whenever Micah's family tried to spread their lies. It was satisfying to watch their attempts fall apart in real time. But still, I wanted more than just public validation. I craved true vengeance. By the time my extended vacation ended and I returned to Louisiana, I was full of purpose. Rather than returning to the house I had shared with Micah, I checked into a discreet hotel. I resumed my job, dropped only vague hints online that I was back, and ignored the flood of messages from Micah and his family. Slowly, a plan began to take shape in my mind, a plan to target the one thing they valued most, their image as a perfect, united family. They ran a family business together, and I realized they had used that business as a weapon against me. Now, I wondered how they would fare when they started turning on one another. 2 months later, I decided it was time to set my plan in motion. I picked up the phone and called Micah. Hey, Micah, it's Gianna, I said calmly. He sounded relieved, but cautious. Gianna, it's good to hear from you. Things have been chaotic without you. We all miss you. Where have you been staying? That's for me to know, I snapped. Let's get to the point. I'm still divorcing you, and I've got some news that might affect you and your family. What's going on? He asked, his voice betraying his nervousness. Considering our marriage is basically over, I think I owe you the truth. I overheard some things involving Hannah, Lucy, and their husbands. They laughed about how they keep you around only to tear you down. Remember that time they made you drive 3 hours to a closed store, just to humiliate you? And that seminar you missed out on? Your cousin Tiago was offered your spot last minute. This is crazy, Micah said, shaking with disbelief. My sisters and their husbands might not be perfect, but they wouldn't do that to me. Oh, there's more, I said, not holding back. Your parents gave your seminar pass to Tiago without telling you. They never planned for you to go, and your mom's been secretly seeing a contractor named Beau for years, behind your father's back. He erupted. I don't believe any of this. Well, you can check for yourself, I said, texting him screenshots, emails, and other evidence I'd gathered with the help of my loyal online community. There was no denying it now. As I'd anticipated, this information detonated like a bomb in their home. They scheduled a big family meeting, and I watched it all unfold through their security camera feed, something I'd learned to do with help from my tech-savvy followers. The entire family went into meltdown mode. Hannah screamed at Lucy, Lucy hurled insults at Hannah, Tom and Dominic barked at each other, and shocking new secrets spilled out. It turned out Lucy had been stealing money from Tom's account for years. Dominic had been having a 5-year affair with a coworker, and both sisters had known about their mother's affair with the contractor. It was total chaos, with accusations flying and objects being thrown. Months later, their once thriving family business crumbled, clients left in droves, and extended relatives distanced themselves to avoid being caught in the fallout. Their perfect family image, the one they had clung to for so long, shattered beyond repair. They had always found comfort in bullying me, but once they started turning on each other, there was nothing left to hold them together. In the end, the downfall of their business and the collapse of their family felt like the ultimate form of poetic justice. It confirmed to me that I had made the right decision. Sometimes, the only way to deal with people who constantly tear you down is to let them self-destruct. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Stay stunned.